and synthesize them for our reports about what the community said and what they think about this particular corridor and how it can best serve them. And your chats are also will become part of what is recorded. So leaving it in the chat does not mean that it does not get captured. It is part of the file that is downloaded by Zoom. Okay. Thank you so much. There's no raise option available. So usually what people see is, let me see. Well, if you're interested in speaking, you can always drop that in the chat, but reactions is usually where you look for the raise hand option. If you look in reaction, you should be able to push the raise hand button. So that's where it is. And if you can't see reactions, tap the 3 little buttons on the end that say more, and it's usually the 3rd option down, reactions. Does that help answer your question, Elizabeth? Let me make sure I got that right in the chat. All right, great. So glad that you could find it. Great. All right. And I wanted to leave room for one more introduction. We just were joined by Nicole. Nicole, do you want to introduce yourself to everybody before we get going to the next slide? I don't mean to put you on the spot, Nicole, for an introduction. Okay, well, we'll move on. And if a question comes up that Nicole can help us with, I'm sure she'll jump in. All right, folks. So we've done our introductions, and a little bit about what we're going to do tonight is review our existing conditions, talk a little bit about future conditions, and then discuss some design trade-offs and next steps. We'll get through that, and then we'll hear from you all. And I want to say, just, off the bat that there have been other studies of this particular corridor done, other concepts that have been developed for this corridor. And this study does not throw away those past efforts by the DOT. What this is doing is providing another concept for the DOT to consider. So what they are interested in knowing is a little bit more about how can biking and walking potentially be supported in this corridor. So it doesn't supplant those other studies. It's merely another option to be considered. And so that's what you kept me on the call about. And so if you're not, if we could have ourselves on mute, unless we're jumping in to ask a question, that would be really great. So we've got some folks who I'll go ahead and just mute and see if I can get through the participants to do that. All right. So on to the next. Our vision statement for this particular study is that it will provide a framework for safe, efficient, and equitable multimodal transportation. We want to make sure this study helps offer a choice between public transit, pedestrian, and bicycle use, and automobile travel. I know. And we want to create a seamless connection between different modes of transportation that ensures that transportation serves development in an appropriate manner. The existing land use on this corridor, as you can see, the yellow here is dominated by mostly residential. The red that's closest to Highway 70 along this middle portion of the study area are mostly commercial buildings. And you'll notice that there are nodes at the top and the bottom of the study area that are in purple, and those indicate industrial land uses that are currently the zoning of the land on this property. Some community considerations that have to be kept in mind when thinking about this corridor is that, oh, sorry, let me help someone mute themselves, is that we have a Duke Power utility easement. There are some streams in this area. There are up to 6 potentially hazardous waste sites. There are 2 huge churches, Calvary Baptist Church and Living Waters Christian Community, and many, many businesses along the US 70 corridor. It should also be noted that there are 0 National Register historic sites. Some of the demographics for this area is that it is a minority area. So that's something to consider. And that many of the concentrations of households below poverty tend to be near the western end of the corridor, but that overall, there's a smaller percentage of persons below poverty than the county or the state in this corridor. In terms of mobility, this area does tend to have a higher rate of access to ownership of at least one vehicle. And many of the homes here are transit connected by being a quarter of a mile from a bus stop. In terms of pedestrian movement through the corridor, what we find is that Highway 70 really does act as a barrier for people crossing from one side to the other. But where there are crossings, they tend to be near the vicinity of Sharon Road and Miami Boulevard. Again, on connectivity when it relates to pedestrianism, that these facilities to support safe pedestrian activity are sporadic and often concentrated around mostly bus stops. Locations of concentration for this activity tend to be Angier Avenue, Sharon Road, and Mineral Springs intersections. Commercial locations, schools, and multiple apartment complexes tend to be drivers for this activity. When it comes to bicycle activity or bicycling activity throughout this corridor, there are very low volumes, mostly because there are no bicycle facilities present along this corridor. And most of the concentration of this activity is on Sharon Road and Mineral Springs Road intersections. As for the future of this corridor, as we can see here, there is a lot more complexity in terms of the density of housing. So these different colors notate different things. This is as of October 2022 from the Engage Durham Comprehensive Plan draft. I want to stress that this is a draft. These are all proposed place types. Hold on, if somebody could. This is a proposed place type, future land use. For future land use, it is not currently yet voted on. And so therefore, these are not the designations currently. This is what they are proposing. And so the light pink along this corridor still is highway commercial. These periwinkle blue pieces at the end are still your general industrial uses. And then the purple are mixed use neighborhoods. So when you think about mixed use neighborhood, you think about the fact that there's going to be different kinds of businesses and not just residential units. So this presents a more complex picture for the future of this corridor in terms of land use. In terms of this corridor's volume growth for traffic, in 2019, along this particular section, there were 44,000 vehicles per day, and that is estimated to grow to 75,000 vehicles per day, 54,000 to 75,000. This is important to note because the typical capacity for a 4-lane boulevard is 36,000 cars for a 45 mile per hour and about 40,000 cars for a 55 mile per hour speed. And so that determines differences in the level of service. And the level of service D is of high density traffic reaching capacity. Level of service E represents low speeds, considerable delays, and also potential volumes that are slightly over capacity. And these intersections represent some of the places where we see a lot more of this walking activity and the more varied biking activity. At US 70 at Miami Boulevard, we noticed that there are no crosswalk markings and substandard ADA accommodations. We don't have the pedestrian refuges, and we don't see signals, pedestrian signal heads or bicycle accommodations. Very similar to US 70 at Pleasant Drive, limited crosswalk markings, quite a few sidewalk gaps, substandard ADA accommodations, and again, no bicycle accommodations. And at US 70 Anger, there are no crosswalk markings, no ADA or substandard ADA accommodations, and no signalized intersections or bike accommodations. Moving forward, we want to use the information collected in community meetings for the study team to identify multimodal improvements that can be options at these key intersections. The boulevards, as something to compare to, the boulevards with daily traffic volumes that are similar to this four lane is Capitol Boulevard, which has about 44,000 cars. So if anyone has been there, that's something to compare it to. Same with Independence Boulevard in Charlotte or US 117 in Wilmington. And when we look at design trade-offs, we just wanted to share these, that at lower speeds, which is defined in this study as 50 miles per hour and under, it's safer for cyclists and pedestrians, and there's less right-of-way needed for vehicles. That means you can get away with narrower lanes and smaller clear zones. It's potentially slower travel times through the corridor, though, and it does prioritize more local and multimodal traffic. Whereas with higher speeds, 55 miles per hour and above, there's bike, ped, and vehicular traffic would have to be separated. That would be the desired design, and larger right-of-way footprints would be required. That would also bring potentially faster travel times, and it prioritizes the through traffic and would need to prioritize options for separated multimodal accommodations. More on some design trade-offs for mixed facilities, that the mix of design speeds and facility types, that local users of all modes would utilize lower speed frontage roads, and through traffic tends to utilize higher speed through these lanes. Separations between bike, ped, and local traffic and faster moving vehicular traffic would be needed. As far as flexibility goes, designs can be utilized strategically between intersections with high local traffic. And of course, it allows for flexibility of prioritizing different modes in different areas of the corridor. And the hope is that it can be informed by current and future land uses. For our next steps is we're gonna have one more in-person outreach on Saturday. There are going to be some more traffic studies that need to be done and completed. There'll be a refinement of the bike, ped, and transit performance metrics to continue evaluating those alternatives. And then there's going to be a concept that is developed, right? So that has not been done yet. And then the next round of outreach will begin in the spring of 2023, where we can share the concept that's developed and ask for more public input on that once we have something that we can share out. And that concludes the slide portion of the presentation. At this juncture, we would really love to hear from you all. Again, do not hesitate to use the reactions feature at the bottom of the screen. You can use it to raise your hand, or you can use the chat to put questions or comments. And this is where we turn it over to you and to share your thoughts and reactions. And of course, you would have to come off of mute. Go ahead, Cindy. Cindy, if you'd like to come off mute and share your comment, and we'll have Kaylee right after you.
Okay. Coming from out of state and dealing with this highway or whatever you want to call it, Interstate 70, that has the major congestion of Sharon Road and Miami, and then further down the incredibly hard right turn from 70 onto Anger. There seems to be a lot more needed and to try to then incorporate pedestrian and bike on this road, I'm like, are you guys looking to bury a lot of people? Because, there's no way. I mean, it just, to me, just seems mind blowing.
Thank you for your comment. Kaylee, would you like to share your comment? And then we'll get to Kelly's question in the chat.
Yes, I feel like obviously we've over exceeded the capacity for 2 lanes on each side, and we definitely need more lanes, as well as the magnitude of new homes that are going in the area is only going to continue to add to this congestion.
Thank you for your comment. The question in the chat shared by Kelly is, how do you interface with Wake County in terms of what they may be planning for US 70? And anyone on any of the teams can speak up on any of our project teams speak up for that. You got to unmute yourself, Ann.
Ann, we can't hear you.
Yeah.
Okay. As far as coordinating with Wake County, this study is drawing upon the use of the regional model, which incorporates information from transportation demand down at the Wake County border, on that site, on that side of the project study area. But the project is really focused on the 4 miles north of the jurisdictional boundaries of Wake County and within Durham. And what we like to do is we like to hear feedback from you all on how you use the corridor. If this is through traffic is really a priority for you, or if there are some needs for bike and ped connections. We're not trying to duplicate what NCDOT is doing. We're just trying to take just maybe looking at it in a different lens from a bike and ped connection. And if that's not what, we're hearing from people, that we need those type of connections, that's why we're here today.
Karen, would you like to share?
I will add something real quick. There is a project, and I believe it's funded in Wake County, to add vehicle capacity to US 70. And that would be from NC 540 headed towards Durham, I guess that's west on US 70, up to what will be in the future, the Northern Durham Parkway, and an extension of Aviation Parkway. So there is a roadway improvement. At that point, if the roadway is widened on the Durham side, it would mesh with the Wake side. If it didn't, it'd have to be tapered down at that point.
Karen, and then Elizabeth Lord. Karen, if you'd like to come off mute and share your comment or question.
Yeah, so from what I can tell, what Wake County was proposing, right, was that they were looking at obviously increasing the width of it, but they were also looking at all the plans I've ever seen have always had the bike lanes separate, off to the side, and it would be a large one that would include it, both bike and people, so that you wouldn't slow and impede the 70 traffic, and then and that makes sense, especially since it's connecting Briar Creek to like Umstead. And that would be used obviously probably regularly, given that the nature of Umstead. But the other big major thing was that they were going to create, the overpasses, so that like a share, like if you did it on Sharon, Sharon would have been above 70, and therefore you wouldn't have, you could then create that cross traffic, because I'm closer down to Briar Creek, and obviously getting across 70 is just basically a whole blocking point, right? And getting across there is impossible to do anything if you don't have a car. So I don't know if you guys have looked at creating on-off ramps, or if you guys are looking at more of a frontage road situation, or if you're just going to create a freeway. I mean, I guess I haven't seen, I don't know what you guys are proposing necessarily, or if you're proposing anything.
We don't have a concept developed. This is a first round of discussion with the community so that we can understand how people use the corridor and what people's priorities for how to use the corridor should be.
Okay. Yeah, I think that for me, definitely keeping the speed up on 70 is probably the biggest priority. And then second would be at least creating cross traffic so you could get across 70 as a pedestrian or bike.
Thank you so much for your comment, Karen. And as promised, Elizabeth Lord will be next, and then Roy, and then we'll get to the question in the chat.
Thank you very much. I have been using the corridor now for 20 plus years, trying to go both to North Durham and also to the Briar Creek. So using both directions. What I have noticed is the large use of industrial traffic, being large vehicles of any kind of nature, and they do slow traffic considerably, given that we have a lot of hills in that corridor. So the question I have is if they're going to continue advocating for a through pathway from the 85 to 540, which is what it seems to be, the traffic seems to be utilizing it for. And especially when they're trying to bypass any kind of traffic issues on 40, you'll notice 70 becomes a parking lot. And it doesn't take long for the Miami and 70 intersection to back traffic all the way back about 2 miles. It can happen as early as 3:30 in the afternoon. Any kind of conditions that are an issue on 40 only exacerbate that. So in my mind, the question is, are we going to continue to have industrial or large traffic items going through there? We're going to try and have them bypass that region to go another route. I don't know if that's even feasible, but if we wish to continue having truck traffic and high volumes of traffic bypassing 40 or utilizing it as a cross through from 85 to 540, then the plan will need to be having those verge roads that go alongside that we can utilize for slower traffic and access to commercial locations. But what I see as an issue is all of those locations that are currently abutting directly onto 70. How would you be able to get those roads there? The other question I have is I have worked in Holly Springs, where they've done some really good planning on free-flowing traffic patterns. And I see a couple of potential areas for that, especially at the Miami and 70 location. Free-flowing might prevent the backup that we've got going all the way up to almost the exit from 540, 885, I should say. I would love to be able to use my bicycle to cross 70. I have never felt safe doing so. And I wouldn't even potentially think about trying to cross the pedestrian at any location. But I would love to be able to do it.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And I did want to also make sure that folks had a chance. Elizabeth also submitted a question in the chat about whether the DOT plans are available for us to review yet. And Elizabeth, I wanted a point of clarification. Are you talking about the DOT plans for this, any past DOT plans for this particular section of the corridor?
I was kind of curious what they thought they wanted to do. And it would kind of give me some inspiration as to how to address it in March, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, we definitely are going to put together a little response packet for things like that with links to other studies. We won't be able necessarily to compare them. We don't have a concept to compare it to. And that's outside of the scope of what we're trying to do here. But we can surely share what's been done before. I wanted to go ahead to Roy And then I'll be asking PR Williams in the chat. I'll be asking their question, and then we'll be back to PR Williams that has a hand up. Yes, Roy, come off mute and let us know your comment or question.
So I live close to Briar Creek and 70, and I use that intersection at TW Alexander and 70. I use those intersections 3 times a week, 4 times a week. Briar Creek and 70 from, I don't know, 7:30 in the morning until 9 is a zoo. You just can't get through there. In the afternoon, it's heavy. And if 70 is already above what's normal capacity and is anticipated to grow, it sounds to me like that we could have emergency vehicles getting through there at certain times of the day. And so the emergency vehicles, 70 going north up towards 85, as was mentioned, Miami intersection, can also be very difficult. I went up this morning about 11:30, and it was backed up a cycle on the light. Those are just, and it's going to do nothing but get worse because of all of the development that has already been approved on Leesville, which will channel a ton of traffic on TW Alexander and Briar Creek. The concept of having bicycle lanes that could get down to Umstead sounds terrific to me. Only an insane person would ride a bicycle down 70 now. And I think those are my comments.
Thank you so much. PR Williams, if you could come off mute and share your comment or question.
Sure. My name is Pam Williams. I have lived in Durham my entire life, in Southeast Durham, matter of fact. And and my whole family lives here. And unfortunately, I can't make the in-person meeting on Saturday because 50 of us will be having our Christmas at that same time. They're on Sharon Road.
That's lovely.
I know. So I have been going through Miami and Sharon and Middle Springs and that area since, since I started driving to Southern High School when it was off Ellis Road. So I'm very familiar, and I have to admit, right now I'm retired from NCDOT. I drive, US 70 now 3 or 4 times a day sometimes. Like I said, my family lives here, and I'm involved in a couple of nonprofit organizations. So I'm out there. I want to agree with Roy, starting about 3:30 to about 6:30, 7 o'clock, whether you're heading eastbound or westbound, the traffic is backed up. I can come out of Leesville Road, and as soon as I get to Angier Avenue, I can start seeing the backup when I'm heading west. And when I'm coming east, several times, as soon as I come over Pleasant Drive, the traffic gets backed up at that shopping center, or it's not a shopping center, where the bingo and the daycare is and everything, just past Pleasant Drive. And it's backed up from there all the way to Miami. And that's just not, every once in a while. That's almost all the time. In fact, my sister had an accident right there close to that driveway where you turn into the bingo, because somebody came over that hill there at Pleasant Drive, and even though there's a light there, they came over and could not slow down enough to stop, and ended up, because the traffic was so bad and everything, they ended up by hitting her in the back with her grandson. And she travels the road probably more than I do, because she's taken her grandson to and from school and has to go Leesville to Voyager. And also my daughter, I'm just kind of trying to give you a idea. My daughter's son, when she was looking for schools, because she was going to put him in Bethesda, as my youngest daughter was in Bethesda Christian Academy. She said she wouldn't do it because she had to pick up her younger sister for years in the afternoon and had to get across that intersection. And she said she didn't want to deal with that. So she looked for schools in Wake County. It's really bad. I'm not sure exactly what time those videos were taken, but that looks like an ideal US 70.
Oh, you watched the videos that were on the MPO website.
Oh, yeah.
I can tell you when they were taken. They were taken anytime between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. during the week.
No, but normally don't we? Okay, normally we design for peak hour and everything. Just so you know, also, you know, I have real concerns because I know NCDOT did, and I realize that y'all are looking at it for a boulevard, but NCDOT did look at a freeway and an expressway. And just to put in an expressway with 6 lanes, the level of service would still be around level of service F. And that was for 2040. And I'm sure y'all looking at something around 2045 or even more. Just so everyone knows, in the last 3 years, 9,000 dwellings have been approved in Southeast Durham. And that is the area between Leesville Road and Sharon Road. So that is going to, and a lot of these developments have already started. I mean, we have over 1,000 acres in Southeast Durham that's being cleared at this very moment. Over 1,000 acres. So the development is coming faster than I think people realize. Also, it's my understanding, I'm not quite sure, to be honest with you, I'd have to go back. There's like 800 units going in at special, it's called Parcel K, right next to Brightleaf. And a light will be going in, another light will be going in there. The lights will not be helping. It'll be helping getting people out, but it won't be moving the traffic. Since I-85 is open, the traffic actually has increased on US 70. And the reason is US 70 and I-40 is a system. And if you slow capacity or if you US 70 continues to be congested, you're going to worsen I-40. And the same thing when I-40, as I think it was Elizabeth said, when I-40 has an accident on it, everybody comes over and goes down US 70. And it's just a gridlock on both roads. NCDOT did take a concept map to a public meeting in late 2018 that just showed 2 options that they were looking at, whether to widen it on the north side or the south side. They also briefly looked at doing symmetrical widening and determined that would take even more businesses and homes. So whether they went on the north side or east side, they figured that was a better alternative because less amount of homes would be taken instead of just widening both sides. And they were, as I said before, they were asked by the MPO in the summer of 2019, 2021, 2021, to stop designs and studies on it. And so it is pencils down on that, waiting for the MPO to do this boulevard study. And my question is in the chat is how are we going to relate a freeway, a expressway, and a boulevard study, and are they going to be presented as these are the benefits of this is the benefits of that. Also for the U5518 project, which is from I-540.
Pam, would you like to give us a moment so that we can get at some of these questions? I'm just trying to make sure that people don't get lost.
Question. Yeah, there was just one question. How is it going to relate, the freeway study or the expressway study DOT did in 2019 to this boulevard study? How can that be related? And are they going to be presented to whomever this study is going to be presented to at the same time?
I appreciate your question.
the results of this study will be presented to the MPO board. And the MPO board is composed of elected officials from Durham and Orange County, and from the city of Durham, Durham County, and the other municipalities. So that's what the study will be presented to. We will not be bringing forward any other studies with this to look at them side by side. I think our board already knows about the two options that NCDOT had for US 70. If they ask us along this process to look at that, or to give them a copy or whatever, of course we would do that. But at this time, I don't see us bringing forward these options together. This option, look at the boulevard and to look at an option that accommodates the bicycle, pedestrian, and the transit services, better than what the other options we've seen. This option is just to bring some other designs into the conversation and to see what would it look like if we had a boulevard. So I think someone said, at the beginning of this session tonight, that we're not trying to, I think Ideal said, we're not trying to replace or supplant any other studies. We're just trying to bring another study into focus and see what it might look like. Thanks.
Will the capacity, congestion? I mean, the way I see it, we're going to be spending, if we move forward on the boulevard, we're going to be spending millions of dollars for a boulevard and still have a massive congestion issue out on the side. Right,
and that's what we're here for tonight, is to hear your concerns about that. Exactly. Yeah, please, Pam, don't think like I've already got my mind made up and I'm moving forward. I don't. We're looking at this boulevard option, and we're going to see how it fares. So we're listening to y'all. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Andy. I appreciate that. And as you know, the US 1 Capitol Boulevard project is going on, which is this project, and it was running simultaneously at the same time. And they are providing along the service roads on that, just as they were planning to on US 70 if it went freeway. So, but really never got to the final point on design.
I appreciate your comments, and thank you so much for your service at the DOT and for sharing your thoughts and continuing to stay plugged into the conversation. Roy, your hand is up again. Is that because you have a new comment or question, or because you weren't able to find a way to lower your hand from before?
No, I had lowered my hand. It's a new comment. I understand nobody's made up their minds, but to me, a boulevard doesn't sufficiently address the traffic that's going to be coming. I don't know how you are able, I don't know how this traffic could be addressed without some of the access that a freeway would give to move a lot of cars out of the North Raleigh, North Wake County and 540 end of things up to 85 and 885. So to me, the boulevard, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you guys have some really good ideas, but the boulevard doesn't address the traffic issue.
I appreciate your comment. Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, one thing I will say is that there's innovations in transportation all the time and things come along. And so we're wanting to hear what people's concerns are, what people's vision are. And so I'm really appreciating the questions and concerns people are laying before us. I'm also really appreciating some of the comments in the chat. Some things that people have shared is, I feel that the corridor needs to be a freeway. I have lived here all of my life, and I hardly ever see bike riders or pedestrians other than the panhandlers at the Highway 70 Mineral Springs Road intersection. Another question that was asked, maybe some of the team can answer this. How are you planning to give drivers options other than freeways, continuous frontage roads? Question mark.
I'll jump in. I don't know, Ann, if you want to say something, but we don't know yet. So we need to look at the data. We need to look at the comments we get from people. And yeah, and I don't know if we mentioned this ideal yet, but you know, this is a process. We'll come back with some alternatives later in spring, and everyone that's registered here will be kept apprised of all the different steps of this project. So yeah, when we do have alternatives, everyone will have ample opportunity to look at those and provide comments.
Very true. Each of you registered, and the reason you've been able to get calendar invitations and text message reminders is because you've very kindly provided your contact information, and I'll be using that to continue to keep you in the loop for future points of public input. Donna, I see your hand raised, and I'd love to give you the floor now for your question and comment. Feel free to unmute yourself and share your question or comment, Donna. While Donna works to get off mute, I'll share a comment from the chat. When 885 was opened, it reduced the traffic on 70 for only about 2 weeks. Then people realized the bottleneck getting from 885 to I-40 East was worse than coming through on 70. Donna, you found your mute button. Great. What's your comment? I know.
Okay.
I can hear that you're driving, which doesn't make me happy.
No, I'm not driving. I'm riding.
Excellent. Go ahead with your comment.
We have a family outing to see Nights of Light, and so my husband's driving. So, and we're on the near parking lot of on I-40. So I've listened and tried to stay involved in all the options, like the expressway, the boulevard, freeway. And I in case we get cut off, I need to say that I'm a proponent of the freeway. I've lived in Durham all my life and lived near 70. I had to cross it to go over to Southern High School also. And I know the problems with it. I get on 70 and go to Briar Creek, and I get on 70 and go into Durham. So I'm also handicapped, and I can imagine a bike lane or pedestrian wouldn't do me too much good. I'm in the through traffic that's going to be going through. And with the aging population, I'm concerned about how many folks would be wanting to be pedestrians in this situation, and how best can our money be spent. And I think that like I said, the freeway is the best option. Right now, the traffic is horrible, and and we need relief. And I'd hate to see something slow down the relief we need through the MPO. So those are my comments. Do you have any questions for me?
I actually do. So you have concerns about, pedestrianism or bicycling. What about getting across 70 to the things on the other side? Maybe not necessarily following the traffic, but what about people who just want to cross it?
In a vehicle?
No, as a bicyclist or pedestrian.
See, that's like taking your life into your own hands. And I think even if you get bike lanes and all, the people, we just had somebody killed right up here on 98, a cyclist, is the visibility, and you're worrying so much about the traffic and all those lights. That's a whole lot to juggle.
Thank you for your comment, Donna. Thank you so much for joining us, even as you travel to some holiday fun. I hope you guys get there safely.
Oh, thank you. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. The next person I'd like to hear from that has their hand up is NCBC.
Hey, Ideal. This is actually Paul Black. I'm on my North Carolina Bicycle Club account, which is the NCBC. But I'm actually here representing Go Durham and Go Triangle, and I don't have any comments. This has been a great conversation, just listening in. And Andy, I'm assuming that we'll have some kind of transit bus accommodations in whatever goes forward. But I wanted to let you know that I wasn't just NCBC, but you get a twofer. You get transit and bike ped.
Lovely. Thank you so much for joining us for tonight's conversation. I also wanted to visit another comment. Going north or south on TW Alexander, it is not unusual to see individuals gunning it through the TW and 70 intersection as the yellow traffic signal changes to red. An overpass there, as well as at other similar intersections, would potentially be life-saving. Another comment further down from someone that spoke at the top of the meeting: I'd prefer more lanes on 70. I live in Brightleaf near 70 Miami, and it can take 10 to 15 minutes just to get out of my neighborhood and clear the 70 Miami intersection during peak hours. Sharon Road is not an option because it takes even longer sitting through multiple light cycles. Regardless of the outcome, when will something come to fruition? Will it include forward thinking to account for future growth, or will it just accommodate today's traffic 10 to 20 years from now? If anybody would like to talk about timelines, that would be great.
I can address one of the questions was, will it accommodate traffic 10 to 20 years from now? The population employment that we use in our travel demand model is for the year 2050. And it adds quite a bit of residential development in that area and to a certain extent employment. So it does look on the future. It doesn't just use the traffic volumes of today. When will this come to fruition? There's no, I don't think this project is funded in the TIP, and the TIP is a 10-year document. So it's going to be a while.
Hold on the line there for this next question that was in the chat. Is resolving the traffic issues at TW Alexander and Briar Creek intersections within the scope of this project? What I will say is that this particular study is looking at the east corridor of 70 between 885 and the Page Road extension.
Yeah, so TW Alexander and Briar Creek are in a separate project that is funded and is moving forward. So I mentioned earlier about a project in Wake County that was on US 70, that's between NC 540 and kind of the Page Road area, but an extension of the Aviation Parkway.
So we'd love to continue hearing from you all. We have about 8 minutes left together. Oh, Trent, is there something you would like to share?
I was just going to piggyback on Andy's comment there, is that project that he's referencing in Wake County at TW and Briar Creek is a U5518 with NCDOT. So there is some information made available to the public that folks can look up there, but it is a separate project than what we're talking about tonight.
If you could drop that project number in the chat, that would be great, Trent. Thank you. Beverly, I see your hand up. Share your comment or question, please.
I'd just like to say that I travel on 70 and that stretch of 70 every day, going and coming to my grandson's school. And it's always a traffic jam in the morning at 8 o'clock. I have recording of it. The traffic being backed up way past Brightleaf and even past Andrew Avenue in the mornings at the stoplight at 70 in Miami and all through there. I actually was in an accident there a couple of months ago where the traffic was backed up all the way from Miami Boulevard all the way to Pleasant Drive, and my car was stopped and someone come over the hill and hit me in the back end of my car. It it depends on what time of the day is. You can barely get through there, and it is a main thoroughfare. So I'd like people to really consider that. And if you need any type of video, I have recorded video at different times of the day that will show you what the traffic is really like on that stretch of traffic. And I'd be glad to share it.
You all have my email address based on the Google Calendar invite that you received. So if there are comments or questions or video, feel free to send it via email. But also just know that the survey for this study will be open until January 6th. Each of you is encouraged, if you have not already, to formally put your thoughts into the survey and share your thoughts there. And of course, to share it with your neighbors and other community members. If you're a member of a listserv or a club or a group, especially that utilizes this corridor, please feel free to share it with them as well. Ray, you said that you had a question about 885 and I-40 access that you wanted addressed. There's a lot in the chat, and I'm trying to sort of, manage and pay attention and be present with folks. Would you mind?
Hey, Ideal, I can talk a little bit about, I think what Ray's talking about is what a lot of people know is the Durham Freeway, I-885. That's hard to say.
Yeah.
Goes down to I-40 down in the RTP. And then there's a lane that goes off to the left that heads east on I-40 that's often backed up. Of course, this project or what we're looking at doesn't address that interchange at all. There are some things that NCDOT is looking at out on I-40, but I don't know if it involves redoing that interchange. A lot of people have talked about redoing that interchange. So as you're headed south on the Durham Freeway and you go to head east on I-40, instead of coming into I-40 on the left, which is unusual for cars and causes a lot of accidents and backups, it would go underneath and come around and go on the right. But that's the longest explanation. The gist of it is there's no projects funded, at least at this time, to improve that interchange.
There's also another question in the chat asking, how is the major growth in East Durham, especially along Leesville Road area and behind the Harris Teeter on TW Alexander, factored into the traffic growth? Trent, thank you.
I'll step in there, and it kind of hints at what Andy was speaking about earlier with regards to the model that helps us produce the projected growth rates, which is called the Triangle Regional Model, that takes into account census data, population growth, employment, things of that respect. So the Triangle Regional Model also covers that area that's being referred to there. So that should be encompassed within the growth. However, we always, as those numbers are produced, we always take a look to make sure that that growth is projected correctly, such that maybe rezonings or plans do change that may have us look at that a little bit closer. But by and large, the Triangle Regional Demand Model does capture that growth in the area as a whole.
Thank you so much, Trent. Yeah, we had some slides in the beginning of the presentation that talked about growth for traffic. Are there any other comments? We've got 3 more minutes together. Like I said, if y'all are interested in staying plugged in with this project, just know that updates, future updates about new meetings, any other kind of materials, future surveys, the current survey can all be found on the MPO website. I've put the link in the chat because we know that we want shorter links though. I also adding in the bit.ly, which is a shorter link that makes it easier to find your folks, find your information and share it with other people via text, since that one can be kind of long. So you can also use this link that I've just attached to the chat. to share with your family, friends along the corridor, neighbors, neighborhood associations, community organizations that are impacted by their use of this corridor. I'm excited to be on this call with so many people who are essentially my neighbors. I've also lived adjacent to this corridor for the last 20 years of my life, and traveled it, like many of you, several times a day, coming and going to work, coming and going to shopping, coming and going to appointments and other kinds of needs. So I thank you all for spending time with us this evening. Does anyone have a final comment before we close out? I don't know if anyone from the team would like to share a word.
Hey, Ideal, I just want to clarify something. It sounds like some of the common questions we get from these 2 online sessions and then the in-person session this Saturday, we're going to create maybe a Q&A. Is that right? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, there's some questions that we keep, seeing over and over.
Yeah.
And we want to refer people to the right places when it's not something within the scope. So if it's a contact person at DOT that can better answer some of these questions, or links to the project sites for existing DOT work, we want to just get you to that stuff right away. And we have everyone's email, so we'll be sending that in short order after the meetings are done, so that we can just do it one time and not flood your inboxes with more and more materials. Well, we are at 6:30, folks. Thank you for the rich and dynamic conversation. Please know that we have this meeting on Saturday. Elizabeth, we won't be going to the PAC meetings. Currently, the PACs, as we know them, are much further outside of the study area. I'm really familiar with the PACs. I've done a lot of presentations there, but the PACs, especially PAC 1, has been given information about these meetings, and they posted it on their listserv, and their leadership is aware of it. And so we've encouraged PAC members through PAC 1, especially since they're the ones closest to this corridor, to go ahead and submit information via the survey. And I've been sending it also to the Northeast Central Durham listserv, as well as the Old East Durham listserv. Thanks for your question, Elizabeth. And thank you all. Thank you all so much. Thank you to the team for answering folks' questions. And thank you to the general public who attended for all your lovely participation. Appreciate y'all. Thank you. Have a great weekend.